NEK-TV Rocks. My guest today is Dr. Mohammed Malik. And you run the Spruce
Health.
family practice or
Yes.
group?
Yes.
What is it?
So Blue Spruce Health is a direct primary care practice. A direct primary care practice is this is a title that we give to practices that are not affiliated with insurances. We accept cash-only payments, and so this practice sets a steady fee for everybody. That fee can be done over the course of a year, and then we provide all the care that you would traditionally get in a primary care practice under that one fee. We don't charge per visit. We don't charge for extra services rendered. We just charge one fee, and
For everybody.
For everybody,
Same fee.
right? It's we do have tiers based on age, and that's
Yeah.
because of complexity. But we
Sure.
only have 3 tiers. We have a pediatric tier, we have an adult tier, and we have the elder care tier.
What do you count as elder?
Well, folks,
High-tech question here.
yeah, folks who are 60 and older.
Oh.
And so
That's young.
that's young. It's young, but we also have a lot more to focus on at that time.
Sure.
Yeah.
And different issues.
Yeah.
So how long have you been open now?
Just a little bit over 1 year so far.
Wow. And I bet it's been a really interesting year.
It's been very interesting. We opened up, this is the first practice of its kind in the area, and so we had no real idea of how well it would do. We're about a year out, and my practice is essentially full, but we've also hired a nurse practitioner to take on more patients because the demand hasn't stopped. So in 1 year, we're pretty pleased with our progress.
So 18 months ago, you were working with a, quote, regular group that was affiliated with a healthcare institution.
Correct.
What made you decide to make the change?
Well, I think a lot of people can sort of sympathize with this frustration that you have with traditional healthcare. I found a lot of my work was starting to shift in service to other organizations or entities other than the patient. So, you know, oftentimes I was meeting the needs of the insurance company. I was trying to make the needs of the system work for me.
Right.
And I knew that I had to get away from that and focus back on the patient again. So
Which is why you went into healthcare in the first place.
it's why I went into healthcare in the first place, and I can say that, you know, my parents who are both alive today, but I can just imagine if they understood the nature of what I was in, it wouldn't have been what had them inspire me to be a doctor.
Right.
Which was service to people, not to organizations.
Right. So you took this enormous leap of faith, and because that's what it is up here, or anywhere else for that matter, because we're so locked into that, and it's a tyrannical viewpoint about what healthcare is supposed to be. Clearly from my accent, I come from a different system initially. It's certainly got its flaws, but I was blown away when I saw what we had here. It was, is that really all we can do?
Yeah, it's a difficult mindset. It's so difficult that it's often very hard for me to convey it to even other physicians who are in the system. And so we've gotten so enmeshed in the status quo that we forget that there was a different model to begin with. Healthcare originally, if you look back in time, it was a very basic transaction between a person and a provider.
Right.
You would call your doctor when you needed them, and you reimbursed them in some form or fashion, and they provided you care. But it's since transformed into now this expectation that there's no care without insurance, that it's just not possible, and many people believe that thoroughly. They don't know that you can get help or care without being a part of the system itself. And so it's sort of it's a belief that's transformed into reality, and it's sort of important to me to shake people and remind them that there is another way to do it, a more honest way, I think.
Yeah. What do you do when somebody needs more care than you can provide?
Yeah, the system still
Okay.
has to work. So if someone has needs, they need to see a specialist,
Mhm.
they need to go to the hospital for care. Those are things that they still really need. It still makes insurance important.
Okay.
So we do refer, we do still send folks to the hospital, we do have to still provide all-inclusive care for those folks. Ultimately, you know, that's typically going to be a minority situation. You want the type of health care where you almost never end up in a scenario where it's much more, you know.
Don't we all?
Yeah, so I think primary care is the first wave of protection for patients.
Right.
If you have good primary care, you're ahead of it. You're predictive.
You're
You can plan. Emergencies happen, accidents happen, and so we should all be prepared for that as well.
And the crazy thing here is primary care is the least accessible. It's relatively easy, not so much living up here in Newport, but it's relatively easy in an area with a lot of healthcare options to get, quote, specialist care. But up here, to get primary care is really a challenge.
Yeah, this is a big problem. I believe I read somewhere that within the next 5 to 10 years, there's about 150,000 shortage of primary care physicians
Yeah.
across the U.S. That's partly to do with a lot of primary care doesn't reimburse the way specialty care does, and
Right.
so some doctors aren't incentivized to do primary care. They're not interested in it.
And they have big school loans.
They have lots of loans. The system is the average primary care visit is 7 minutes long in the U.S. So this is a
Yeah.
number that they've said 7 minutes is your visit. Well, it's frustrating for a patient, but it's frustrating for the doctor as
Sure.
well, because you're under a clock. You're under stress.
Yeah.
You have to deal with that patient, and you have to move on to the next one. So it's not a very desirable situation, and so here we are looking at a massive shortage in the upcoming years, and I thoroughly believe primary care is extremely important to everybody. You'll need a cardiologist maybe once in your life or twice in your life, but you need a primary care every year.
Yeah.
You need someone who's there for you always, hopefully.
And most people don't get that.
A lot of people are not able to get that.
Right. Because it's not available, or 7 minutes is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
So how long can somebody who sees you be in the room with you?
We let them decide. We have a system that lets people self-book, and so you can book for 60 minutes, you can book for 30 minutes. There's no appointments shorter than 30 minutes. You're welcome to take 5 minutes if you want and be on your way. But our shortest time visit is 30 minutes, and we have new patients coming in for 90 minutes.
Wow.
That means we get to know you.
You
We
really
get to know.
do a full exam, too.
Yeah, I like to ask questions. How's your sleep? How's your what do you enjoy? What are things that you do on your free time? Because understanding all that about you means when something is going on, I can interconnect. I can say,
Yeah.
well, you know, I know you in a way that helps me understand what the problem is you're dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, this is sounding sort of so idealistic that it's going to be hard for people who are used to the 7 minutes or less to even begin to imagine it. And yet now you've been doing this for more than a year.
It's been a year, and I still get questions from people, where's the catch?
Yeah.
I still have people
Where is
saying,
the catch?
right, and they're doubtful, and they say, well, just this morning before coming here, I had a patient say, well, what do I owe you for today? And I said, well, you've already paid because that's, you know, you've paid to join. And so there are no payments with your visit. You know, we did an EKG, and all of that was included. We don't charge extra for those things. So people are still a little skeptical.
Right.
But it works. I mean, we are not making profits the way the traditional system would make profits, but we're much more happier with our lifestyle.
Sure. But you are earning a living.
We're earning a living, which is a reasonable living, and we're happy with the care we provide. The quality we can't feel compromised on that, and everyone in the system feels good about it.
That's great. And clearly you have the quote bells and whistles like an EKG. I presume you can do blood work.
We do blood work. We do blood work at a reduced rate. So some places might charge $100 for a blood test, and we aim and strive to keep our tests roughly around $10, $15. There are tests that are quite expensive, and
Yeah.
so those can't be avoided.
Obviously.
But the basic majority, we tell people that if you have a physical, and we're doing a full physical evaluation, your blood work shouldn't cost more than $50 through us. And that's really meaningful to people with no insurance at all. And,
Right.
and they're really coming in because they need it, and they're saying, I want to pay for the blood work and not have to deal with the hassle. And I think I can remind you here that oftentimes, even with insurance, your bill is several $100s for the blood work,
Oh, yes.
with the insurance that you've paid quite a bit for
Right. Yeah, I mean, the cost of health insurance is outrageous.
already, at the base, at the minimum.
Yes. And then there's a copay, and then there's another payment, and then there's another, and every little test or every little appointment can have umpteen other sneaky little copays tucked in there.
Yeah, and I think the system's sort of become so large and so robust that it's almost necessary. But I think what I'd like to even just let people know is that there is a possibility where we provide primary care at a fixed rate, and for us to still be profitable and live a comfortable life
Yeah.
and still provide you with all those services at a reduced rate, healthcare can work that way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be outrageous.
Right. Do you have a working relationship with the hospital?
We have a good relationship. I still refer patients to
Sure.
my colleagues at the hospital. We
The
oftentimes
few who are still there.
there are some excellent physicians
Yeah.
still there, and we refer for surgeries. We refer for specialty care there. There are some tests or blood work that has to be done at the hospital.
Right.
It's just the right thing to do. So we might have a patient come in and say, I'd like to do this here, and I have to say to them, the right thing for you is to go to the hospital and do this there. I'm happy to say that I can still phone up the hospital, phone up my colleagues and say, I'm sending this patient over, this is the situation, and they do a fantastic job from there. And so I will admit that our system isn't for everybody. Some people still really feel supported and get excellent service in the traditional system. I really like to just be an option for people, that there is choice, and the choice allows you to decide what's best for you.
Right. Are you the only option? So I'm going to say like this, but yeah, I'll stick with that. Are you the only option like this?
I think there are one or two other private practices in Vermont, and I want to make a distinction because some of those will, we often get referred to as a concierge practice. But I think I want to clarify that because I don't correct people if they say it, but I feel like there is a distinction because there are a couple practices in Vermont that are concierge practices. In those practices, you're traditionally paying a very high retainer fee to have the doctor on call.
Sure.
And they'll still charge insurance at the same time. So they're, in essence, double dipping.
It's a very different system.
It's different. I like to say we're a direct primary care. A direct primary care serves the needs of everybody. Like I said, we have uninsured people. We have people who are in the middle where they make just too much to qualify for Medicaid, but they don't make enough to afford health insurance. Or they work for an employer that doesn't offer health insurance. Well, these people are left behind, and they can't afford a concierge practice, but they can very well afford us. And a lot of employers have gone that route, where they can't offer their employees health insurance, but they'll say, well, we'll give you a membership to Blue Spruce Health, so you at least get primary care, and some of your basic needs can be met. We can't offer insurance to all our employees, but we can offer this. And so we have employers who sign up their employees with us.
That's really encouraging. It's very cool.
Yeah.
How do you get the word out?
To date, most of our word has been organic. It's been word of mouth, and that's been phenomenal. We do some Facebook posts and
Sure.
everything, and we've been pretty low-key about that. I think it is important to use institutions like this, and we're really appreciative to be able to let people be aware of us through this mode. But word of mouth is fantastic. To me, there is no other metric to say how well we're doing other than when a person steps out of the office and says, I believe in this so much and I appreciate it so much, I'm going to go tell others. And that to me is it's the best credential we have.
Right. How big is your practice?
So we like to limit per provider. So we have said that generally a panel should be 500 to 600 patients per provider.
Yeah.
That's important because that means that we have time for you when you need us. We have extended visits. We can respond to a call where you say, I need to be seen today. Well, let's fit you in today or tomorrow. And that we can only do that by saying we're not just going to take everything and everybody. As we have more and more demand, we like to add on more providers, and so that helps us to take on more patients.
Sure.
So we do limit our patient panel size, and we don't ever want to, overextend and then be able to say to you, well, you need us today, we can see you in 3 weeks.
Right.
That's not when you need us.
Right, and that's not healthcare.
That's not healthcare, and that's when small problems become big problems.
Exactly.
And it can get worse from there.
Yeah. So really anybody who's choosing to use your model is going to have way more access than they would ever have.
It's not solid written in stone, but I make a solemn promise that if you're a member of our practice, you should be able to be seen within 1 to 2 business days. And even if you're not seen, you're responded to in that time frame.
You mean calls get returned? Wow.
I personally will take calls sometimes. I will personally pick up the phone, and sometimes a patient will say, I'm sorry, I called the wrong number. I didn't mean to reach you. I meant to reach the nurse. And I'll say, that's fine. I can help you. What can I do? If it's just a refill, I'm happy to do it. And my patients can attest to that. They've called in and got me on the phone. They get my email address. If you need to email with a question,
you can do that.
I can do that. I can reply to your
And
email.
you have the time to actually
I have the time
do that.
I have the time to research your case. I have the time later on in the day to say, I'm going to think about Pam. I'm going to think about what she said, and I want to think about, I told her this, but maybe we should do it differently. And in a different system, I may not necessarily have the time to sit and think about you as a person and how I can serve you better.
Right. I assume that you have a vision of how you want this to move forward.
My vision is that this is so readily available and accessible to everybody that we have plenty more physicians doing this. Like I said, there's always a case for the traditional system, and for some people that will just work well. But I think that physicians themselves who are feeling burnt out, who are feeling exhausted with their work burdens, their loads, can say to themselves, I can have a practice where I feel fulfillment, I feel joy, I can serve my community, I can do all of that and still feel good about the job I'm doing and still make a living. I would hope that this becomes more prevalent as time goes on. It is a growing model. In many parts of the country, DPC is growing rapidly.
Where else has it taken off?
The Northeast seems to be slow. There's a lot more in the South, a lot more in the Midwest of the U.S. It's really, really important in rural communities where you have many, many people who work for themselves. They're self-employed. They can't afford the insurance. And their needs usually are, these are folks, they're hardworking. They don't go to healthcare often. And so when they need you, they need you. They're not exactly looking for a call every day. So I'm seeing a lot more practices growing over the last few months. The Northeast is a little bit slow, and I'm hoping we can change that a bit.
Well, you certainly don't have much competition from traditional healthcare, because I'm sure you hear the word on the street and your patients will say it to you. What is out there doesn't work for them. It's not a system that's about health and healing.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I can say that I'll speak for myself because I can't speak for others, but I know who I work for now.
Right.
I work for the patient. If the patient's unhappy, well, then they can take their money and go elsewhere. And
Sure.
that is affecting our bottom line. So I'm beholden to the patient. And so I have to serve. If I'm not serving, I'm not in business.
Right.
So it's a big problem, and I don't know that there will be a solution for it anytime soon. But unfortunately, the government tends to have its own ways of solving this, and it's just making healthcare more and more complex.
Right.
The burdens on the physician are astronomical, and so who ultimately pays for that? Well, the patients pay for that by getting less access, less
Right.
care.
When I first moved up here, I worked as a visiting nurse. One of the things that drove me out of that was the expectation that 50 minutes of the hour I could spend with somebody in their own home had to be banging stuff into a computer. It was ridiculous, and it wasn't necessary.
A lot of the computer systems for today are record keeping for good care, but some of it is record keeping for other reasons. So
Right.
For billing,
Yes.
if you have put all the right information in, you've checked all the right boxes, you can bill better. So we do away with that. We say you've paid for your care. So all the boxes that we have to check go away, other than the ones that we need truly to just record keep for your care.
Right.
So we don't serve the computer, we serve the patient.
And you don't should serve the insurance industry or the pharmaceutical industry,
Right.
which is also important.
Yeah, we're actually partnered with a pharmaceutical company that provides us with medications at cash rates, so that some patients who have no insurance can actually get their medications through this pharmacy for cash at a significantly reduced price. So something could be $10 cash pay, whereas even with your copay, with your insurance, that medication might be $20. You could go to Walmart and it might be more expensive.
Right. That's actually a really good piece of information.
Yeah, we had, I can remember a case where a young lady from another country, she's working here undocumented, she came to us and she just needed antibiotics and had no way of getting them. And so we keep a few on our shelf and we were happy to dispense it. I think it was $6.
Right. Yeah, and you can do that. And so could other clinics and other practices.
They sure can.
Yeah. I have dental care over the border, or I did before the border got shut down, and still will again. But as part of something that I needed to have done, I had to have an antibiotic. And the prescription that the dentist was going to write, of course, couldn't be filled over this side.
Right.
So I was a cash purchaser. It was a fraction of what it would have cost here.
Here.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Fraction.
Yeah.
And when I went into the pharmacy, she apologized for having to charge, quote, so much. I laughed.
You were pleased.
Yeah, this is a bargain, trust me.
Well, a lot of
crazy.
these things do cost that here. So as I mentioned earlier, we can do blood work in our practice, and it costs $10, $15 for
Right.
the test. And that's including, what it costs to draw the blood,
Right.
to send it, to ship it, and all the supplies that are involved. It can cost that here. The same with the medications.
Right.
It just doesn't always end up that way.
Right. And it's really nice to know there's a pharmaceutical company that will work with you, because it's very tempting to think of them all as rogues, robbers, and
There's a few.
everything else.
There's
yeah.
a few in the U.S. now that are supporting direct primary care. They support the model. They support the vision. They believe in providing accessible care to folks, and so they have partnered and they have been able to. It's not easy. For example, it's a company that's several states away, and they have to ship the stuff in.
Right.
So you have to go looking for it. It's not necessarily right at your doorstep, but it's there. And I'm hoping as it grows, as this model becomes more popular, you will see more of these spring up. And usually, when that happens, price goes down.
Right. But can you get insulin at a reasonable price?
Insulin's difficult because it has to be refrigerated,
Right.
and we do still get it at a cheaper price than sometimes what's available at the pharmacy.
I'm appalled with what has been done with insulin here. It's just insane.
Well, you would think that the longer a product's been out, generally speaking, as in any other industry, prices should be going down.
And in other countries, it's true.
Right. Yeah. So it's not like, 20 years ago, if you bought a computer,
Right.
a computer would be a couple $1,000s. Well, now you can buy an iPhone, which is like a computer, at a fraction of the price, or maybe the same amount. But the point is that as
Right.
time goes on, technology,
cheaper.
right, things should be getting cheaper,
And more accessible.
more accessible.
As opposed to less.
Right. Yeah, so it's always fascinating when sometimes the pharmaceutical industry can increase the price on meds they've been providing for decades.
Right.
And they should actually be producing it at a lower cost.
Exactly. Which sort of tells you about the philosophy of business and the model of ethics or no ethics.
Well, in a lot of other industries, there are checks and balances in place.
Right.
You're actually not allowed to price gouge or do some of this. Unfortunately, in healthcare, it's become so convoluted and murky that sometimes these things are not just allowed, they're actually legal.
Right. And encouraged.
And encouraged sometimes.
And yet your model has its own checks and balances, clearly, and a cash buyer can provide that really important piece.
Cash means choice.
Yeah.
You have choice. You have choice to spend it or not. And oftentimes, if someone is not able to, we do our best. We have some partnerships with pharmaceutical companies
Sure.
where they provide us with free samples. So there are some medications that cannot be found cheap. They're
Right.
branded. They're new.
Yeah.
And so we do our best to always partner with those folks that will say that we're going to provide you with no reciprocal
Reciprocity,
arrangement where we are now beholden to them, but they're allowing some services or products that the patient can have for free. And so we do what we can for those folks. Occasionally, you still have to, again, rely on the traditional healthcare system to
Right.
provide it.
Right. And can you partner in the same way with things like physical therapy and other services that normally would partner you?
Yeah, so while we don't bill insurance,
Yeah.
we are happy to take on patients who do have insurance and still refer to other services that will bill their insurance. So we're happy to have a patient come in and do a referral, and then the referral gets put through their personal insurance. We don't bill insurance.
Right.
So we won't take any money from insurance, even if we had the right to. Even if we did something where we could bill the insurance, we bill the patient at a flat fee, and we won't take money from anywhere else. So you can still get a lot of the care if you're insured. We have plenty of patients who are insured and choose to get us because the accessibility is so meaningful to them.
Right.
Yeah, and still use their insurance for other things.
'Cause I'm sure those on Medicare and Medicaid would have questions because I'm, for example, on Medicare because of my vast age here. But we are forced to buy that. We have no choice.
Yeah. And so we have a few patients who are
Yeah.
Medicaid patients, and they're making do. They're finding, the funds to pay for that basic care. But
Yeah.
for them, it's meaningful because they say, well, I have a condition that needs immediate care, and
Right.
I don't like waiting. I don't like being told I have to wait 3 months for my next appointment. I was seen
Right.
today, I have another issue. Well, we can't address that issue. Make another appointment. Well, that next appointment.
That's insane.
It-
I know that happens a lot, and that's
yeah.
absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge for you to use 60 minutes and not get all your things out all at once, you know. Most people don't use their full time.
I'm sure.
You know. So that's meaningful to people where they say, you know, regardless of Medicare, Medicaid, it's meaningful for them to pay for that kind of service.
And we all have some discretionary cash.
I'm cheaper than a plumber. For the most expensive tier, it's $100 a month. We're cheaper than an electrician, cheaper than a plumber. We're cheaper than a lot of things.
Everybody's cheaper than a plumber. It's the industry we all should have gone into.
That's true. Yeah. People can pay for a Netflix subscription, their internet every month, and healthcare in our practice is just about the same price. Internet's really good for you. You need internet to be connected to the world.
Yes.
But we provide healthcare. Healthcare is important as well.
Well, up here you don't often get internet either, so.
Yeah. So sometimes, you know, if you do the math right, you find that we're actually cheaper than some of the other services you subscribe
I'm sure you
to.
are. And something that is really providing care as opposed to just checking the boxes.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful model.
We're proud of it.
Yeah, you should be. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that your practice is already just about full.
Yeah. We didn't anticipate it, but certainly at this stage we realized there's actually much more need for it than just us.
Right.
So we're happy to see that growth. We're happy to see people supporting us and believing in us. It's been tremendous.
Yeah, I have heard several people say that they've joined your practice, and they've joined it because they didn't feel they were getting care in a way that was meaningful to them.
And I hope that they're getting it now.
I have not heard any complaints. No. Far from it, in fact.
Great. We're happy for that.
Yeah. How big is your space?
We have a practice down on East Main Street. It's
Right.
401 East Main Street, just across from the Chinese restaurant. And we have...
How convenient.
Yeah, we have good access to food. The brown cow's right there, too. We have a couple rooms, a couple practice rooms in there. So it's a space that I feel it's not a big location, but we certainly get everything that needs to get done in that one space.
So it's not like walking into the ER.
No, it's I would say it's quite cozy. You come in, there's usually a nurse in the front desk, and or you'll see one of us, the providers. You'll see myself or Katrina, who's our nurse practitioner, and oftentimes we'll be in the hall, or we'll greet you and take you in. So it's a very cozy atmosphere. It's very personable. We like to keep it that way, not cold or formal.
That sounds great.
We love it. We couldn't be happier. I mean, my quality of life has improved tremendously. So selfishly, on my end, I couldn't be happier. I get to see my kids at the end of the day. It's not obtrusive, you know.
And you're not fried at the end of the day.
No, I have energy. I have time. I can commit what I have to my patient. I'm not pulled in different directions.
Right. And most healthcare providers that I know at this point are fried.
Well, they're exhausted. The pandemic was not easy on folks, and
pandemic was not easy on anybody.
Right.
But you guys certainly got the worst of it.
Yeah, it was tough. But again, a lot of physicians are going into this for service. You know, things can get shifted along the way, and your priorities sort of you kind of sometimes even forget. But it's nice to be reminded, and it's nice to know it's still possible.
Right. We're about out of time, so thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
And letting us know that there are some choices here, that we actually can still be either a patient or a provider in a way that feels caring and healthy.
Thank you. And we welcome all comments, and we welcome people coming in and asking. And
where can people get information?
So our website is bluespruce.care. That's blue like the color, spruce like the tree, .care, not .com. And we're on Facebook as well. And feel free to message or email us through any of those means, and you'll always get an answer.
That's great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.